Maya Richardson woke up at 5:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. The alarm sound made her jump a little. She had stayed up late last night, going over important papers for her big meeting. Maya was 38 years old and worked as a top lawyer at Caldwell and Brooks, a famous law firm in New York City. Maya's apartment had a view of the city skyline. As she got ready, she looked outside at the early morning fog covering the tall buildings. Another day, another challenge, she said to herself. This was not just any day. Today she was flying to Chicago to close a deal worth millions for her biggest client, Global Innovations Incorporated. She picked her best black suit from the closet. Maya always dressed well for important meetings. Her mother had taught her that people judge you by how you look, especially when you are a black woman in a mostly white field. First impressions matter twice as much for us, her mother used to say. Maya had learned this lesson well through her years at Harvard Law School and 10 years at her firm. After a quick breakfast and coffee, Maya called an Uber to take her to JFK Airport. Traffic was heavy, but she had planned for this. She always arrived early, another habit her mother had taught her. Being late gives people an excuse to doubt you, was another one of her mother's sayings. At the airport, Maya moved quickly through security. She had done this so many times that she knew all the little tricks. Take off the watch before the metal detector. Laptop out and in its own bin. Shoes off quickly. Maya had earned her first-class ticket through many years of business travel. She had over 500,000 miles on this airline alone. As she walked to gate B23, she checked her phone for any last-minute emails from her team. Final boarding call for flight AC 476 to Chicago. The announcement came over the speakers. Maya quickened her pace. At the gate, she handed her boarding pass to the agent and walked into the jet bridge. On the plane, Maya found her seat in the first-class cabin, 2A, a window seat. She put her small carry-on in the overhead bin and placed her leather briefcase under the seat in front of her. The first-class cabin was half empty, with mostly men in business suits sitting quietly with their laptops or newspapers. As Maya settled into her seat, she noticed a tall, blonde flight attendant named Jessica watching her. Maya knew that look well. It was a look that asked, "Do you belong here?" without saying a word. Maya had seen this look many times before, in expensive restaurants, in business meetings, and now, once again, on an airplane. Jessica, the flight attendant, walked over to the man in seat A1, directly in front of Maya. "Good morning, sir. Can I get you a drink before we take off?" she asked with a warm smile. The man asked for water, and Jessica quickly brought it to him. Then Jessica looked at Maya. Her smile changed, becoming smaller and tighter. Something in her eyes shifted. Maya took a deep breath and prepared herself for what might come next. She had been through this before, but it never got easier. Maya straightened her back and reminded herself of who she was, a Harvard graduate, a senior partner, and one of the best corporate lawyers in New York. No matter what happened next, she would handle it with the grace and strength that had gotten her this far. Part 2. The Incident. As passengers settled in, the lead flight attendant, Jessica Winters, approached Maya with visible skepticism. "Excuse me, but this is the first-class cabin," Jessica said loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. When Maya calmly confirmed she was in the correct seat, Jessica insisted on checking her boarding pass, something Maya noticed she hadn't done with other first-class passengers. After verifying Maya's ticket, Jessica remarked within earshot of others, "Well, you certainly don't look like you belong here. Must be your lucky day." Throughout the flight, Maya received noticeably different service than the other first-class passengers, with Jessica repeatedly making subtle but pointed comments about Maya enjoying the perks and getting used to the luxury. Just as Maya pulled out her laptop to check some emails before takeoff, Jessica, the flight attendant, came over to her seat. She stood there with her hands on her hips, looking down at Maya. "Excuse me," Jessica said in a voice that was much louder than necessary. "This is the first-class cabin." Her words made several nearby passengers turn their heads to look. Maya had been in this situation before. She kept her face calm, even though her stomach tightened. "Yes, I know. This is my seat," she replied in a quiet, professional voice. Jessica's eyebrows went up. "May I see your boarding pass, please?" she asked, holding out her hand. Maya noticed that Jessica hadn't asked to see anyone else's boarding pass in first class. Maya pulled up the digital boarding pass on her phone and showed it to Jessica. The flight attendant studied it for longer than needed, as if looking for a mistake. Well, Jessica finally said, handing the phone back. You certainly don't look like you belong here. Must be your lucky day. She said this just loud enough for people in nearby seats to hear. An older man across the aisle looked uncomfortable and turned away. Maya took a slow, deep breath. She had worked too hard to let this ruin her day or distract her from her important meeting. She simply said, "Thank you," and went back to her emails. As the plane took off, Maya noticed how different the service was for her compared to other passengers. When Jessica offered pre-flight drinks, she gave detailed options to everyone else. Would you like water, juice, or perhaps a coffee? But when she got to Maya, she just said, "Drink," without a smile. When it was time for lunch, Jessica spent time chatting with other first-class passengers. How is your steak, sir? Is it cooked to your liking? She asked the businessman in front of Maya. But when she placed Maya's meal down, she just dropped it on the tray without a word. Later, Maya pressed the call button to ask for some water. 5 minutes passed before Jessica came over, even though the cabin wasn't busy. Yes, Jessica asked with a tight smile. May I have some water, please? Maya asked politely. Of course, Jessica replied. I'm sure you're enjoying all these perks. Getting used to the luxury, are we? Maya simply nodded, not wanting to create a scene. In her years as a lawyer, she had learned that staying calm and documenting everything was the best approach. As the flight continued, Jessica made more small comments. When helping Maya with her bag in the overhead bin, she said, "These premium seats do come with premium service, something you might not be used to." When Maya asked for a blanket, Jessica said, "We save these nice blankets for our regular first-class customers." Maya noticed a middle-aged Asian man across the aisle watching these interactions with a frown on his face. He seemed to be paying close attention to what was happening. Maya opened her notebook and began writing down everything Jessica said, along with the times. As a lawyer, she knew the importance of details. She wasn't sure what she would do with this information yet, but she knew that documenting it was important. The flight was only 2 hours long, but it felt much longer to Maya. She focused on preparing for her meeting, trying to ignore Jessica's behavior. But each small comment and each moment of poor service added up, like small paper cuts that eventually really hurt. Part 3. The Witness. Unbeknownst to both women, Daniel Chen, the Vice President of Operations at Global Innovations, was seated across the aisle. He had been quietly observing the interaction, disturbed by the treatment his colleague was receiving. While Maya maintained her composure throughout the flight, Daniel could see the hurt and frustration beneath her professional demeanor. He made mental notes of every interaction, growing increasingly concerned about what he was witnessing. The Asian man sitting across from Maya was Daniel Chen, Vice President of Operations at Global Innovations Incorporated, the very company Maya was traveling to Chicago to represent. Daniel had been with the company for 15 years and was well respected for his fair business practices. Daniel watched everything that happened between Maya and Jessica. At first, he wasn't sure if he was seeing what he thought he was seeing. But as the flight went on, it became very clear to him that Maya was being treated differently because of her race. Daniel was on his way to the same meeting as Maya, though they had never met in person before. They were scheduled to meet later that day, along with the other executives. He had planned to introduce himself during the flight if the timing seemed right, but now he decided to wait and watch. Every time Jessica said something rude to Maya, Daniel made a mental note. He noticed how Maya kept her cool and acted professional even when she was being disrespected. He was impressed by her calm strength, but he was angry about what was happening. This should not be happening in 2025, Daniel thought to himself. He had faced his own share of prejudice as an Asian American executive, but it still shocked him to see it happen so openly. Daniel pulled out his phone and, pretending to check emails, took a few discreet photos of Jessica's name tag. He also wrote down the time and details of each incident in his notes app. As a high-level executive who often dealt with legal matters, he knew the value of good documentation. About halfway through the flight, Daniel went to the bathroom at the back of first class. On his way back to his seat, he overheard Jessica talking to another flight attendant in the galley. "Can you believe they let just anyone into first class these days?" Jessica was saying. "Back in my day, there was a certain standard. Now look who they're letting up here." The other flight attendant looked uncomfortable and didn't respond. Daniel cleared his throat to let them know he was there. Jessica quickly changed the subject and moved away. Back at his seat, Daniel added this conversation to his notes. He looked over at Maya, who was focused on her laptop, reviewing presentation slides. He could see she was preparing for the Global Innovations meeting, which confirmed his suspicion about who she was. Daniel considered saying something to Jessica directly, but his years in corporate America had taught him that sometimes the most effective approach was to address issues through proper channels where real change could happen. He decided he would speak to Maya after the flight and let her know she had a witness to everything. As an executive at the company she represented, his words would carry weight. For the rest of the flight, Daniel watched as Jessica continued to provide excellent service to every first-class passenger except Maya. When Jessica brought hot towels around, she forgot to offer one to Maya. When she asked if anyone needed anything before landing, she skipped Maya's row entirely. Maya remained professional, but Daniel could see the subtle signs of stress in her face, the way she occasionally closed her eyes and took deep breaths, how her shoulders tensed whenever Jessica approached. As the plane began its descent into Chicago, Daniel prepared what he would say to Maya after they landed. This was more than just bad customer service. This was discrimination, plain and simple, and Daniel wasn't going to let it slide. As a business leader, he believed in holding people accountable for their actions. The plane landed at Chicago O'Hare Airport at 10:45 a.m. As people started to gather their things, Maya stayed in her seat, waiting for the crowd to thin out. She was in no rush to have another interaction with Jessica. Jessica stood at the front of the plane, saying goodbye to passengers as they left. She gave warm smiles and "thank you for flying with us" to everyone. But Maya knew her smile would disappear when it was her turn to exit. Just before Maya got up to leave, she made a decision. She would not just walk away this time. Too many times in her life, she had stayed quiet about small acts of prejudice, thinking it wasn't worth the trouble, but today felt different. Maya walked to the front of the plane with her head held high. When she reached Jessica, she said, "May I have your full name and employee number, please?" Jessica's fake smile dropped immediately. "Why do you need that?" she asked, her voice suddenly cold. "I'd like to provide feedback about my experience today," Maya replied calmly. Jessica hesitated, then pointed to her name tag. "Jessica Winters, employee number 8742. Go ahead and report me. Nothing will happen." She said this with a dismissive smile, clearly not worried. Maya nodded, took a photo of the name tag with her phone, and walked off the plane. As she entered the terminal, she wrote down everything she could remember about the interactions while they were still fresh in her mind. Maya was so focused on her notes that she didn't notice Daniel Chen walking up behind her until he spoke. "Excuse me," he said. "I believe we're heading to the same meeting." Maya looked up, surprised. She recognized him from the plane but didn't know who he was. "I'm Daniel Chen, VP of Operations at Global Innovations," he said, holding out his hand. "And you must be Maya Richardson from Caldwell and Brooks." Maya shook his hand, surprised. "Yes, that's right. Nice to meet you in person, Mr. Chen. Please call me Daniel," he said. Then his face became more serious. "I need to tell you something. I witnessed everything that happened on that flight. The way that flight attendant treated you was completely unacceptable." Maya felt a wave of emotion. Usually, when these things happened, there were no witnesses willing to speak up. People either didn't notice or pretended not to see. "Thank you for saying that," Maya said. "I'm used to it, unfortunately." "Well, you shouldn't have to be," Daniel replied firmly. "I took notes and photos. If you decide to file a complaint, I would be happy to provide a statement as a witness." Maya thought about it for a moment. "I was planning to report it, but I didn't expect anything to come from it. These complaints usually get ignored." "Not this one," Daniel said. "Not if I have anything to say about it. Global Innovation spends millions on travel each year. That gives us some leverage." They began walking together toward baggage claim, discussing what had happened. "The thing is," Maya explained, "it's never just one big obvious thing. It's a dozen small things that add up. Each one could be explained away as a misunderstanding, but together, the pattern is clear." Daniel nodded. "I saw the pattern. There's no excuse for it." As they waited for their bags, Maya felt a mix of emotions. anger at how she'd been treated, gratitude for Daniel's support, and a strange sense of purpose. Perhaps this time would be different. Perhaps this time, something would actually change. Daniel checked his watch. We have 3 hours before the meeting. Would you like to get some lunch? We can talk more about this and prepare our complaints to the airline. Maya nodded. I'd like that. Thank you. The next morning, Maya woke up early in her hotel room. After a successful meeting with Global Innovations yesterday, she now had time to deal with the airline incident. She opened her laptop and navigated to the airline's customer service page. Maya carefully wrote her complaint, describing everything that had happened with Jessica. She included times, exact quotes, and specific examples of the different treatment she received. She kept her tone professional and stuck to the facts. In another part of Chicago, Daniel Chen was doing the same thing. He wrote a detailed account of what he had seen, making it clear that he was a vice president at Global Innovations and a frequent business traveler. Daniel mentioned that his company spent over $15 million annually on air travel for its employees. Both Maya and Daniel submitted their complaints and received automatic replies. Thank you for your feedback. We will respond within 5 to 7 business days. Maya didn't expect much to happen. She had filed complaints before about similar incidents with other companies, and usually got nothing more than a form letter and maybe a small voucher. 3 days later, Maya received an email from the airline. It was exactly what she had expected. A standard apology that didn't address the specific issues, along with a $150 voucher for a future flight. The email ended with, "We value your business and hope to see you on board again soon." Maya forwarded the email to Daniel, who responded immediately, "This is unacceptable. Give me a day to handle this." Daniel forwarded both complaints to his company's travel department with a note. "Please escalate this to your highest contact at the airline. This is not just about customer service. This is about discrimination against our legal counsel. I want this addressed at the executive level." The travel manager at Global Innovations, Sarah Williams, had strong relationships with all their travel providers. She immediately called her contact at the airline's corporate headquarters. "This isn't just another complaint," Sarah explained to her contact. "This involves one of our key legal partners and was witnessed by our VP of Operations. Mr. Chen is ready to take this higher if needed." The message quickly moved up the chain at the airline. By that afternoon, Maya's phone rang with a call from an unfamiliar number. "Ms. Richardson, this is William Taylor, Senior Vice President of Customer Experience at National Airlines," a deep voice said. "I'm calling regarding the incident on your flight from New York to Chicago." Maya was surprised. She had never received a call from such a high-level executive before. "I want to personally apologize for your experience," William continued. "What happened was completely unacceptable and against everything our airline stands for." William explained that they were conducting a thorough investigation. He asked Maya several questions about what happened and listened carefully to her answers. "We take these matters very seriously," William said. "I can assure you that appropriate action will be taken. Would it be all right if I call you in a few days with an update on our investigation?" "Yes, that would be fine," Maya replied, still surprised by the response. After hanging up, Maya called Daniel to tell them about the call. "I've never had a company respond like this before," she said. "It's the bare minimum they should do," Daniel replied, "but I'm glad they're taking it seriously. My contact in our travel department says this William Taylor is pretty high up in the company." Maya felt cautiously hopeful. For once, it seemed like someone was actually listening, but she had learned not to expect too much. Companies often made big promises when they were worried about bad publicity, but those promises didn't always lead to real change. At the National Airlines headquarters in Atlanta, William Taylor sat in a large conference room with the head of Human Resources, Diane Miller, and the Chief Diversity Officer, James Washington. On the table in front of them were printed copies of Maya's and Daniel's complaints. "This is serious," William said, tapping the papers with his finger. "We have a senior partner at a major law firm and a VP from one of our biggest corporate clients both reporting the same incident. We need to handle this right." Diane nodded and pulled out a file. "I ran a search on Jessica Winters in our system. This isn't the first complaint against her." She opened the file to show 3 previous complaints from passengers over the past 2 years. All described similar behavior. Jessica treating passengers of color differently than white passengers in first class. What happened after these complaints? William asked, frowning. Not much, Diane admitted. She received a warning after the first one. After the second, she was sent to a one-day sensitivity training. The third was filed just 3 weeks ago and is still being processed. James Washington shook his head. 1 day of training isn't enough to change deep-seated prejudice. And clearly, it didn't work. William agreed. We need to look at all the evidence. Let's check if there's any video from the flight. Most planes had cameras in the cabin for security purposes. The team requested the footage from Maya's flight. They'd also interviewed other flight attendants who had worked with Jessica. 2 days later, they reviewed the evidence together. The camera footage wasn't perfect. It didn't capture everything. But it clearly showed Jessica checking Maya's ticket when she hadn't checked anyone else's. It also showed her skipping Maya when offering services to other passengers. Interviews with Jessica's coworkers revealed more problems. One flight attendant, Teresa, said, Jessica often makes comments about certain passengers not belonging in first class. She's been doing it for years. Another, Michael, added, I've heard her use racist language in the break room. I reported it to my supervisor once, but nothing seemed to happen. William was disturbed by what they found. This goes beyond one bad incident. This is a pattern of behavior that we failed to address properly. Diane agreed. And it points to a larger problem in our system. Why weren't the previous complaints taken more seriously? Why did it take a VP from Global Innovations to get our attention? The team decided to bring Jessica in for a meeting. She arrived looking confident, even a little annoyed at being called to headquarters. Ms. Winters, William began, we're investigating a serious complaint about your behavior on a recent flight. Jessica immediately became defensive. That woman was being oversensitive. I treat everyone the same. We have statements from a witness and video evidence that suggests otherwise, Diane said calmly, sliding the complaint forms across the table. Jessica read them and her face paled when she saw Daniel Chen's name and title. I didn't know who he was, she said quietly. Would it have made a difference if you had known? James asked. The issue is how you treated Ms. Richardson, not who saw you do it. William added, we also found previous complaints against you with similar allegations, and your colleagues have confirmed witnessing problematic behavior. Jessica's confidence crumbled. She had been with the airline for 15 years and had always believed her senior status protected her. She had never expected to face serious consequences. What happens now? She asked, her voice small. William exchanged glances with Diane and James. They had already discussed the next steps. This was not just about one employee. This was about sending a message throughout the company that discrimination would not be tolerated. The next morning, Jessica Winters arrived at work as usual. She had been a flight attendant for 15 years and had never faced serious trouble before. She believed that the meeting yesterday would blow over like all the other complaints had. When she entered the crew room, her supervisor, Mark Thompson, was waiting for her. Jessica, we need to talk in my office, he said in a serious tone. In his office, Jessica found Diane Miller from Human Resources waiting. Jessica's stomach tightened with worry. Please sit down, Mark said, gesturing to a chair. Diane opened a folder and placed several documents on the desk. Ms. Winters, following our investigation into the incident on Flight AC 476, we have made some difficult decisions. Jessica interrupted. It was just a misunderstanding. That woman was being too sensitive. It was friendly banter, that's all. Mark shook his head. Jessica, we have reviewed the evidence thoroughly. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. We have video footage, witness statements, and reports from your coworkers. What reports? Who's been talking about me? Jessica demanded. That's not important, Diane said firmly. What's important is that this is not an isolated incident. We have found a pattern of discriminatory behavior. She slid the previous complaints across the desk. These are 3 similar complaints from the past 2 years. In each case, passengers of color reported being treated differently by you in first class. Jessica shifted uncomfortably. Those weren't a big deal. I got training and everything was fine. Clearly, the training wasn't effective, Mark said. You were given multiple chances to change your behavior, but you didn't. The company has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. Diane's voice was firm but not unkind. National Airlines has decided to terminate your employment, effective immediately. Jessica's face went pale. You're firing me? After 15 years? Over one passenger's complaint. No, Mark corrected. We're firing you over a pattern of behavior that violates our company policies and values. We gave you chances to improve, but you didn't take them seriously. Jessica suddenly looked scared. You can't do this. I have bills to pay. I'll lose my apartment. I'm sorry, but our decision is final, Diane said, pushing a document forward. This outlines your final pay and benefits. You'll receive 2 weeks severance pay. Jessica refused to sign the paper. I'll appeal this. I'll get my union rep involved. That's your right, Mark said calmly. But the evidence is very clear. Jessica stormed out of the office. Over the next few weeks, she did file an appeal with her union. The union representative reviewed all the evidence and told Jessica privately that her case was weak. They have multiple witnesses, video evidence, and a history of similar complaints. The rep explained. I can file the appeal, but you should know it's unlikely to succeed. Jessica insisted on moving forward anyway. She believed she was being treated unfairly. The appeal process took 6 weeks. During that time, Jessica struggled to find a new job. Other airlines wanted to know why she'd left National, and she didn't know what to tell them. When the final decision on her appeal came back, it was not in her favor. The termination was upheld. The review board wrote, after careful consideration of all evidence, we find that National Airlines acted appropriately in terminating Ms. Winter's employment based on repeated violations of company policy despite previous warnings and training opportunities. Jessica was shocked that her 15-year career was over because of what she still considered not a big deal. She had never imagined that her behavior could have such serious consequences. 6 months passed since the incident on the plane. Maya Richardson continued her excellent work at Caldwell and Brooks law firm. She had mostly put the airline incident behind her, though she appreciated how seriously the company had handled her complaint. One morning, Maya received a call from Daniel Chen at Global Innovations. Maya, do you have a few minutes to talk? Daniel asked. I have some news you might find interesting. Of course, Maya replied. What's happening? Our company is making a big change, Daniel explained. For the past 12 years, we've used the law firm Anderson & Wells for all our transportation and logistics work. That contract is worth $1.2 billion over 5 years. Maya listened, wondering why Daniel was telling her this. Tomorrow, we're announcing that we're switching that contract to Caldwell and Brooks, Daniel continued. And we're recommending you as the lead counsel. Maya nearly dropped her phone. This was huge news. A $1.2 billion contract would be one of the largest in her firm's history. That's incredible, Maya said. But why the change? Anderson & Wells has a strong reputation in transportation law. Daniel paused before answering. Several reasons. Your firm's expertise is outstanding, of course. But I'd be lying if I said our experience 6 months ago didn't play a role in the decision. He explained that after witnessing how Maya handled herself during the discriminatory treatment on the plane, he had watched her work closely over the past months. Her professionalism and skills had impressed everyone at Global Innovations. The airline incident showed me something important about character, Daniel said. How people act when they think no one important is watching tells you who they really are. You maintained your dignity and professionalism even when being treated unfairly. Maya was touched. Thank you, Daniel. That means a lot to me. There's one more thing, Daniel added. National Airlines uses Anderson & Wells as their main law firm. When our board learned about this connection, they weren't comfortable continuing that relationship. We want to work with partners who share our values. The news about Global Innovations changing law firms spread quickly through the business world. When the official announcement came the next day, National Airlines' stock price dropped 3% as investors worried about what this meant for the company. Business reporters began asking questions. Why would Global Innovations suddenly end a 12-year relationship with Anderson & Wells? Industry insiders soon connected the dots to the incident 6 months earlier. One financial news website ran the headline, Flight Attendants Discrimination Costs Airline $1.2 billion legal contract. Maya never spoke publicly about the incident. For her, this wasn't about revenge or punishing the airline. It was about accountability and creating a world where professionals were judged by their skills and character, not by how they looked. 2 weeks later, Maya led her first major meeting as head counsel for Global Innovation's Transportation Division. As she looked around the table at her new clients, she saw Daniel Chen smiling at her. "Let's get started," Maya said confidently. That same day, in another city, Jessica Winters was interviewing for a customer service job at a department store. She was still struggling to understand how one small incident had changed her entire life. And at National Airlines headquarters, the executive team was implementing new, comprehensive anti-discrimination training for all employees. They had learned an expensive lesson: in business, as in life, how you treat people matters.